Kia ora koutou, ko Huhanan Smith tōku ingoa, nō Ngāti Tūkore he ahau, nau mahara mai ki tōku whare, kia ora. Today we're talking about adaptations for Māori coastal communities to climate change. We have two case studies in the Horowhenua to Kapiti region, and the two case studies the first case study encompasses two tribal coastal farms just south or just on the Oho River towards Waikawa. So two tribal farms, Tahamata Incorporation and Incorporation of Ransfields. But that case study also includes an Ahu Whenua Trust, the Hatete Whānau Trust as well, a block of land that's down by the coast towards Waikawa. And then the other case study we have is just south of the Otaki River on the Katihiku Ahu Whenua Trust block. So some of the things that our team have been doing, we have a research team based in Otaki and Kuku, and those girls, Aroha Spinks and Moira Potama, and myself, principal investigator, we have been working with iwi and hapū and running hui or meetings and wānanga with iwi and hapū, the shareholders of the tribal farms or the farm boards. We've also had a couple of meetings where we've discussed some of the findings that we have collated, and these findings have been put into maps, and so that we can show iwi and hapū, all the tribal shareholders of land blocks, etc., just what kind of things to expect in regards to the current scientific data, where they're talking about how wet the west coast, between Horowhenua and Kapiti will become. And so we get to show them the maps that we did of what things might look like in 20 years, what things might look like in 50 years, what things might look like in 100 years, and just some of the aspects that iwi and hapū can start actioning, like what are the key things that they might need to do to cope with what is happening now. A project like this is sometimes difficult for people to grasp the kind of maybe the severity of what is potentially going to happen, and you can get a bit of a continuum of understanding. So you might have the complete denial kind of aspect right through to what do we need to do now, and that can make for some interesting conversations and how we need to kind of keep designing opportunities for iwi and hapū to see the potential of what adaptive change can look like. So when our team, the iwi and hapū team, have been working with Victoria University, we've been very much melding the ideas about what iwi and hapū would like to see from a cultural context and an economic context, and then with the designers bringing their ideas and thoughts and processes to the project. So we've been able to get some really good cross-cultural dialogue and good collaborative work going on between people. So we feel really pleased about that. We want to talk to iwi and hapū about making our wetlands really useful, making space for water. We want to find space for diverse farming practices. So, changing things like concentrate on the dunes and get the manuka planted for future bees, get the harakeke in the wet areas, new diverse kind of practices for iwi and hapū farming. We want to make the best use of the high ground because the two different case studies, you have a lot of high 1,000-year-old sand dunes and that kind of thing. So what can we do to make those areas more, productive and more interesting with diversified opportunities? What can we do to adapt the existing buildings that are on the farms? And what can we do to continue our cultural relationships of manaaki tanga, or when we care for people with our locally sourced resources. All in all, this project is really about how a range of specialists can come together really well with iwi and hapū and help them cope with something like climate change that will affect all of New Zealand. It's not just the Horowhenua Kapiti coast, it will affect all of New Zealand. And that, together, that that expertise and that willingness to work closely with each other can actually help forge better understanding and accelerate the adaptations that we probably need to take into place now.
Last year in 2015, Deep South Challenge gave the team I'm working with some funds to look for about 18 months at a particular problem in the Horowhenua. We were looking at how design can help iwi coastal farmers address the impacts of climate change, in particular sea level rise and the kind of inundation that's likely to come from climate change in the next 100 years. One of the really interesting things about this project is that there's two kinds of methodologies that are a little bit different from what you'd normally get in science-based projects. We're actually responding to the brief that the climate change people gave us, which suggested that New Zealanders are good at climate change science, but we're not very good at communicating it. I'm a designer, and I think that design is an incredible way of communicating these kinds of issues. So part of our pitch to Deep South Challenge was to use design and exhibitions as two distinct methodologies to push the work forwards.
So the aim of my project was to use the sea level rise as a shift, a catalyst, I suppose you could say, from the traditional sense of farming into new practices. So my project name was Ecological Economies. It really kind of says what it is in the title. Basically trying to have interdependent systems, so everything that was contributing to the system were helping each other, and there was a reciprocity between the ecology and the profitability of the farm, as well as the community, as well as tourism and all the other things that were going to end up coming into the site. For me, the most important thing was reconciling the environment and the site and the values of the site to the people who were going to be living there. The water is, like I said before, really significant to Māori culture. It's a way of transport, it's a source of food, it's basically a source of life. So I wanted to kind of roll with that and say, how could I make the site a place where water is the source of food and transport and life and profit. So how I did that was using the water as a main source of, I guess, community-based activity as well as farming-based activity. I really wanted them to not be so separate as they were currently on the site. I wanted them to all be quite integrated. So I focused on that relationship the most. Myself and an architect developed typologies to move about in the water, and then they get developed over time as the water comes and inundates the land. We focused on algae farming, fish hatcheries, eeling and green-lip mussel farming. They were our main water profitable elements. We were hoping that they sat in the landscape in a way that wasn't outwardly affecting or having a negative impact on anything else. And then we were hoping that at the same time as they were making profit, they were educating people and they were also providing ecological benefits as well. And on land, I focused on three main aspects as well. So I have the flax cultivation, cash cropping and bees. I really want to treat it as not your typical working farm. I think that's the cool thing about this project, is we got to try and see what could happen and how climate change could positively affect the site rather than be seen as a total negative, because it isn't. And I think it was a cool catalyst for change that people may not have originally accepted.
I didn't want this project to be just about landscape architecture. I also wanted to bring back and engage with the people aspects and the cultural aspects. And I sat there and thought about how people and culture are brought together by food, and how any country you go to, food is the first thing that first point of contact with that culture. There's always a story behind the food, and there's always a very strong cultural significance with food. How can we responsibly manage the landscape and bring back that kind of food aspect while still managing to restore wetlands, waterways, and just bring back life to the landscape again? I looked at soil types, wetland ecologies, dune movement, fluvial dynamics, anything and everything that had to do with this project, so that every move I made was informed and it was responsible. The place of food in Māori culture, I think, much like many others, such as Japanese, it's more than just feeding the community. It also has cultural and spiritual associations. When guests are invited onto the land, we were first welcomed at the marae, and then we were kind of fed, and it was just kind of a customary thing where we all ate together and got to know each other. But traditionally, it's food from the land. So I thought it was really sad that they couldn't do that anymore. It'd be nice to go onto the land and eat, crops and vegetables that were grown on the soil, fish from the rivers, and anything else that was there naturally, berries, so on. I thought it was really important that it wasn't just a dream, it was actually a possibility, and that in 50 or so years, or even less than that, you could transform this landscape into something that's actually really, really special.